Shalom, my name is Adam Wasser from Brooklyn, New York. Statistics show that by the year 2020, Israel will not be a majority of a Jewish state, but it will be a majority of a non-Jewish Arab state. Today, when you take the Arabs of the Gaza Strip and the Arabs of the West Bank and Israel proper, you find that there is almost a 50-50 split between the Jews and the Arabs. But by 2020, this split will not be 50-50, but it will be more like 60-40. Why is this? It's because Arabs have more children than the Jewish people in Israel do, and a lot of Jews leave Israel to go and work in Europe and America, while many Palestinians stay in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, more because they're stuck there and they have a more family structure of staying where they are, where their family are. So how do we deal with this? How do we change it? Well, for one, we need to increase Jewish population in Israel by increasing Aliyah, by pushing Jews to move to Israel, and we need to show Jews that they have to have more children, that having, the average Jewish family in Israel today is about 2 to 3 children. We need to push Jews to have more children. Now, in a democracy, in a westernized state as Israel is, women going to work and having full-time jobs, it's very hard for them to have more children because they want to be successful. So we need to not take away the woman's liberation of going to work instead of staying home with the family, but we need to adjust it. We need to figure out how can we increase Jewish birth rates in Israel while allowing a woman to be free as she pleases in Israel. And that can be achieved with maybe the husband staying home or the wife staying home, or maybe having more children in a family, but the government helping that family have where the both parents go to work, but the government helps them with childcare and schooling more than we are now. The government, if it truly wants to increase Jewish birth rates in Israel, must be willing to put the money forth for families to be able to have larger families, whether it's food stamps, welfare, and other necessities that families need to pay to take care of larger families. Aliyah is definitely an essential part of increasing the Jewish population of Israel. I was working on making Aliyah, and God willing, I intend to make Aliyah one day. But as I was making Aliyah this year, actually in 2012, I found that it was very difficult. Israel is looking for people that are more successful. They have higher, they're going in there and they're going to have big jobs with more money, and they have some good money in there to buy homes right away. They're not really there to help the average Jew that might not have a lot of money and might go there to have a mediocre job. They're really looking for money, Jews with money, to move to Israel, and that is a mistake by Aliyah. It is not the traditional sense of Aliyah as we knew it back then, and we need to go back to the idea of traditional Aliyah, where you're Jewish, we need you to come to Israel, and we're going to do everything possible to help you absorb into Israel and help you settle in Israel. And it's not about how much money you have, it's not about how much money you're going to make, it's about you being a Jew living in Israel. And we really need to change this, what has happened to Aliyah. And we need to go back to what Aliyah was all about, and not what Aliyah is becoming and has become. These two concepts are essential. Another part of increasing Jewish population is the idea of bringing Judaism into the home of common Israelis, bringing the idea of Torah and wisdom, because the more Israel becomes secular, I'm not speaking against secularism, but secularism does reduce populations. If you look at Europe and you look at westernized parts of the United States of America and Canada, you find that the families are smaller than more traditional families. And we need to make Israel more traditional, make Israel a bit more conservative in the idea of family values, of religion and godliness. And these things will help the population increase. Israel has the potential to have a large population of Jewish people. But we need to be able to change ourselves and change our ways in order to make that happen. Yes, I believe in the removal of the Palestinians from the West Bank and Gaza and into Saudi Arabia. But if the government of Israel is not willing to do that, and we must stay at the status quo, then we have to work with what we have. That's the reality of most lives, that you have to work with what you have until it changes. And until the Palestinians are removed from the West Bank and Gaza Strip, this is the best way of dealing with it. But even if the Palestinians were removed from the region, we should still go with these principles and work with it. The Jewish people as a whole around the world represent about 13 million people. It's growing very slowly, but in America you have about 6 million Jews, 40% of which intermarry to non-Jewish people. Out of the 40% that intermarry, only about 20% of their children are Jewish. Out of that 20%, only 10% of the grandchildren end up Jewish. So we need to deal with intermarriage. We have to deal with pushing people and convincing people to marry Jewish and raising their children in Jewish tradition. In Russia, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, back in the 80s, he said about 8 million Russian people today in Russia are Jewish, but they don't know it. So we need to find these people. We need to say, okay, you come from a Jewish heritage, you come from a Jewish mother, how can we bring you back? How can we convince you to come back? And there's other groups around the world that claim that they're Jewish, like the Jewish Ethiopians and the Menashenite Jews of eastern India, and then you have Jews down in South Africa that they're very black, about 75,000 of them, but they claim that they're from the tribe of Israel. We need to investigate these things. We need to really, if they're Jewish, let's bring them in. Let's bring them to Israel and let them live a Jewish life. Their dreams, our dreams. We have a crisis at hand when it's coming to the future of Israel, and that is, we have a huge Arabic population. It doesn't even matter if they're Arabic or not. That's not the point. Non-Jewish population in a Jewish state, and that influences how Israel governs herself and how Israel deals with herself on the international scale and on a local level. Israel must be at least 80% Jewish. What do we do about this? What's the solution? What are the ideas? The Israeli government has no solutions, has no idea what to do about this. And we need to look at this in a more religious sense of how can we bring people back to Judaism? How can we get Jews to marry Jewish? How can we increase Jewish family sizes, birth rates? And how can we increase Aliyah? This has a lot to do with religion. This video is to bring awareness to this issue and to give some ideas of how to deal with this issue. But ultimately it's up to us and the Israeli government to actually imprint this. I encourage you all, let Israel know, her officials, Netanyahu, and everybody in Israel that is in a political position to make change, let them know that we need to do something. Make them make decisions to help increase Jewish families in Israel. And let us ourselves make the effort of having bigger families and getting married, including myself. God bless you all and have a wonderful day. Amen.